On one ordinary day, while the city was living its ordinary life, events like what happened on that day are hard to think of. But before the appearance of the first portal 10 years ago, a huge red portal suddenly appeared in the sky in front of the whole town while everything was going on as usual. This portal instantly attracted the attention of all the inhabitants. Aliens, demons, creepy creatures, they have different names, began to appear from the other side of the portal, taking the lives of all the people in their path. Neither pleas for help nor anything else helped them. In such conditions, no one knew the reasons for the portal's appearance. In the midst of this carnage, one of these creatures attacked a defenseless couple, the man holding the girl in his arms. But in an instant, the creature had taken their lives. The guy's reddened hand fell to the ground, still holding the phone that someone had called. The city museum was hosting a tour led by a young second-year student named Harry. The group was near an ancient sarcophagus that was found in 2024, made of gold and a one-piece structure. But in the middle of the talk, one of the attendees started live streaming. "Please stop broadcasting," the student asked in a flash, but to his surprise, it wasn't the exhibit she was filming, the girl stated. It turned out that the main subject in her broadcast was not the ancient sarcophagus, but Harry himself. Looking at her with surprise, Harry asked to stop the broadcast after all, as it was forbidden in the museum. Walking back to the group, the young man asked not to do that again and not to be distracted from his work. But the girl stopped him with a question. "What is in the sarcophagus itself?" "At the moment there is no technology that would allow us to find out what is inside, and to protect the relic it was decided not to open it," the student answered. An alarm sounded because of a planned fire drill, and everyone was asked to leave the museum building. Our hero thought this was strange because he had not been warned, but he told everyone to get out. There was a rumbling sound, everything shook, and the birds fluttered outside the window. Harry looked out the window, and what he saw shocked him. After the shaking began, a gold-level portal appeared 3 minutes and 40 seconds later. Harry began to hear several soldiers in strange uniforms say strange things, that the tethering point was complete, that the border was opening, that they had to prepare for battle and protect the civilians. But what he was most worried about was whether all the visitors to the museum had managed to get out. Someone shouted, "Olivia, a gray-haired, young swordswoman with a small keychain in the shape of a teddy bear, is in charge. Ava is the deputy. No, I have a brother waiting for me, and yes, it will affect my ability to fight," Olivia said, rushing into the thick of things. Harry heard Olivia's name, but at the same second the woman standing next to him began to fall to the ground. The student picked her up and tried to help her up, but she coughed up red liquid. There was a rumbling sound, everything glowed red, and lightning flew from the portal. Many of the soldiers, along with Olivia, had their weapons drawn and were looking toward the portal, waiting to see what would happen. Sitting beneath the huge sarcophagus, Harry tried to make a phone call, but his machine was not picking up a connection. Deciding that his phone was useless, he reached for the girl's phone to try to call. But picking up the phone, he saw something strange. 2 red eyes were looking at him from the portal itself. A huge hand reached out of the portal, but 3 swordsmen jumped to meet it, with Olivia in the center. Noticing that something was amiss here, the red-haired swordswoman called out to the gray-haired swordswoman, stating that the portal didn't appear to her to be the same as the yellow-level portal. Delivering many stabbing sword blows to the huge arm, it did not yield any results. It turned out to be much stronger than it appeared at first glance. With one blow, the arm instantly takes the life of one of the swordsmen. Olivia is horrified and immediately realizes that 3 supports have been broken, and this will cause a hole to appear. The catastrophic level of danger forced Olivia to use all her strength, striking powerful blows with her sword. The young heroine absorbed the power of the 5 crystals, surprising her partner greatly. All the soldiers realized that they had been misinformed. The level of the portal was much more powerful than they had been told. One of the soldiers ordered everyone not to relax, for the portal might pull them in. In the heat of battle, Olivia realized that there was no easy way to deal with this portal. No matter how many blows she threw, it didn't work. It turned out that it was an illusion of the center of the portal. So they would have to find the real center. When Harry saw the huge red eyes in the reflection of the phone, he rushed away from where he was standing, terrified. But the monster in the portal didn't leave him alone. With its hand it chased after the young man. A running young man is trying to call someone, but a creepy hand catches up with the student and takes his life with one swing. After that we were shown who he was trying to call. It was Olivia. Whether she was a relative or an acquaintance, we don't know yet. But the young man's weak body was covered by something huge, something golden. Harry, reunited with heaven, was enveloped in a golden veil. "I'm in heaven," the young man whispered. "I don't know what's happening. I don't understand anything." He began to hear voices. In most of them Olivia should have retreated, but she didn't want to. She was in the heat of battle. All she cared about was defeating her enemy. With each passing second, he heard more and more how the girl did not give up, defying all orders. Even knowing it wasn't a real enemy, but his illusion, she kept fighting. But one thing wouldn't get out of his head: Olivia, his sister, the best student in the class, reliable and a little bit fiery. What is she doing there? What's going on? And most importantly, why can't he see anything? Harry agonized. He couldn't see anything, though he struggled and tried to see something. After all, his sister was there. But to his surprise, Olivia came through in a second. With one swift and powerful blow she broke through the veil and harmed her own brother. The battle continued, and this time the giant hand decided to strike. It used its power to penetrate through Olivia's defenses, which caused a deep shock. Because just seconds ago it was just an illusion. The soldiers who were in the battle rejoiced as the monster began to materialize. But it turned out to be a big disadvantage. The monster turned out to be much stronger than the swordswoman. However, they didn't lose heart, unlike her brother who was trying to shout at her every second to get her sister to retreat from the battle. After all, her defeat was inevitable. Watching the unequal battle, Harry sees that after a few quick attacks from his sister, the monster strikes back, which penetrates through the defenses and ends the battle instantly, striking Olivia. Seeing Olivia fall, Harry begins to remember all the mistakes he has made. He realizes that he never asked her what was going on at school, why she was missing so much and not coming home. It is only now that he realizes what it was all for. But Harry couldn't stop until it was too late. He tried to ask his little sister to stop, and he succeeded. Olivia heard her brother's voice. But hearing the words didn't stop the swordswoman, they only raised her fighting spirit. He realizes that he can't just give up. If she loses, the consequences will be catastrophic, and the entire city will fall. Rising from her knees, Olivia prepared for the last round. Clenching her teeth, gathering all her strength for the final blow, the swordswoman made one last dash towards the demon. Gaining so much power that the wind currents created circles behind her, as if she was flying faster than sound. Screaming in agony, Harry is still trying to distract his sister from the unfair fight. But in an instant, something happens. Harry opens his eyes abruptly. He begins to smell a strange odor, the smell of a hospital. "What, am I still alive?" whispered the hero. Recovering, Harry looked around to see where he was. It was a hospital room, but there was something unusual about it. Instruments were hooked up to Harry, and the machines showed that he had no pulse. But this did not mislead the hero for long. Behind the door he heard a familiar voice. It was Olivia. At the same second he jumped out of bed, but to his surprise he had no time to say anything, as Olivia with a smile on her face said, "Brother, you're awake." Olivia did not hold back her tears, but was glad that her brother was alive. But it wasn't her that was surprised, it was Harry. For some reason his sister looked younger. At that moment she seemed like a little sister, though Harry knew his sister had long since graduated from junior high school. Harry tried to reassure his sister, but she didn't believe him. After all, he had been hit by a car and died at the hands of an alien. When he looked back, he noticed that it was 2042, which meant that it had been 4 years since Harry had been hit by a car and put into a coma. What Harry realized didn't stun him, but rather lifted his spirits. Now he would be able to protect his sister. But while Harry was talking to his sister, a man entered the room. He introduced himself as Leo, the commander of the Nighthawks. However, Harry didn't listen to him and slammed the door shut sharply. Olivia tried to tell her brother not to slam the door on the man who had helped her when he was hit by the car, but Harry said that no one just helps, that free cheese only comes in a mousetrap. But his sister explained to him right away that she knew about it because the stranger told her right away that he would help her, but she had to go study with him to help the community. Harry began to think that even if he didn't let his sister go to study with this man, it wouldn't be able to save her for long, because those monsters would attack, and she would have a chance to study so they would learn how to fight. And it will be especially important for Harry to have the strength to protect his sister. Harry decided to go outside to thank Mr. Before he went out. He asked his sister to help with the discharge. As he opened the door, he noticed that Leo was standing right outside the door, as if he had overheard their entire conversation with his sister. Once in the elevator, Harry started talking to Leo. He let him know that he knew all about portals, aliens, and most importantly, that he wanted Olivia to join his squad. But the man immediately began to explain to him not to accuse him of anything, that what he noticed in his little sister is not perversion, but that she has an incredible talent that will help save people. Leo persuaded Harry to let his sister join the squad because it might save all the people, but to his surprise the boy agreed, which shocked him. But Harry didn't just agree, he had conditions that had to be met in any case or Olivia wouldn't go anywhere. "Day, what do you want?" asked Leo in surprise. But Harry stated that the only condition would be that he would enroll with his sister. And he didn't care if he was going to be a warrior or a commoner, but he had to be near his sister. Harry's enrollment was not a problem, but his enrollment in the war band was difficult, because he was an ordinary man, not gifted like his sister. Walking home from the hospital after being discharged, on a positive note thinking they will be cooking a delicious meal at home to celebrate his recovery, Harry notices a bruise that was a side effect of the treatment. But looking closer, he noticed it was a cadaver stain, which shocked him. Olivia noticed that her brother had lost his appetite and was pale. But Olivia noticed that her brother had lost his appetite and was pale. Harry reassured his sister, telling her that a decreased appetite after a coma was normal. After lunch, he gathered up the dirty dishes and went to wash them. Standing alone with his thoughts, he began to ponder the fact that he had stopped wanting to eat and didn't need sleep. But one thing scared him the most. After a few checks and tests and readings, Harry realized for sure that his machine was not broken in the hospital. He really had no pulse, and the bruise on his arm did indicate a cadaver stain, though. The only explanation that came to his mind was that he was a walking corpse. The only more logical explanation was that the magic of the ancient sarcophagus had transported his soul back 4 years to the day he came out of his coma after the car accident. Thus, it was as if his life had been rewound back in time. The young man was saved by the fact that no one had noticed his condition so far, and he quietly continued to walk as a normal student. After a while, he decided to find out when he could go to the academy with his sister. When he called Leo, he found out that he had been accepted, but there was one condition: he had to score 90 points in all subjects, otherwise he would be expelled. After the summer vacation, the young brother and sister arrived at the academy after all. Walking around the large territory and looking at the local sites, Olivia noticed that instead of the monument of Confucius stood some other person who was considered important in this academy. But while our heroes were walking around the territory, someone was following them. The one who was keeping an eye on the new students was a man who introduced himself as Roma, the tutor in charge of admissions for the special classes. Suddenly he dropped some bag with Harry's things, and Olivia approached him and offered to walk together to the discussion to tell him what, where and how. Noticing that Roma was overly insistent on telling Olivia that the academy was doing well, with sports fields and art galleries, Harry grabbed him by the shoulder and, without being rude, explained that they could take it from there. Stepping away from their future mentor, Harry and Olivia put on the gear they had been given, which was an electronic watch. A few minutes later, they were handed over. Dear freshmen, please hurry up and finish your registration and go to the military assembly. Harry looked at it with a surprised face. A lot of freshmen were frantic, some crying, shaking with nerves, for the watch they had been given was making an incessant irritating sound and vibration. Only our Harry sat with repose, though Olivia was almost as well, but was already on edge. Olivia couldn't help herself, she begged her watch to stop, and after a while it did stop making noise. Harry thought that they only stopped buzzing after some code phrase, but it looked like someone was controlling them. "Everyone be quiet!" shouted a very beautiful and slender woman with large breasts and gray hair. After her words, all the clocks stopped making any sound. People began to look at each other and noticed that this academy seemed to accept students regardless of age, because next to our heroes stood a man over 40 years old. The big-breasted beauty introduced herself as Scarlet. She is the supervisor of the academy's freshmen and was ready to answer any question, but on one condition: if the students passed the military test. However, Olivia was left out of the loop as she is still a junior high school student. Scarlet, noticing that a lot of students were puzzled, began to complain. After all, in the document they had just been given, it was written that the academy was not responsible for the lives of the students during military training. Therefore, she clarified that if someone does not agree to get such a useful experience and pass the test, they can leave the academy that second. After these words, the students began to sign, but were cautiously hesitant. Except for our hero, because he already realized that he was a corpse, and he himself was not worried about his life. The main thing is that Olivia got admission without taking the test. While the students were signing documents, someone unknown was watching Harry. Noticing that, he quickly signed without thinking. After the students started to get into their cars, as Harry got into his car, the stranger approached him and tilted his head to say something. The stranger said that if Harry was in trouble, have him hide and call the clock. This bonus was for correctly answering the call that had been searched for in the clock a little earlier. But Harry was not pleased. He was outraged as to why his sister's watch wasn't turned off as well. The stranger teasingly replied that he just liked Olivia's voice. The cars started moving, and Harry had no time to speak to the stranger. Growling that if he found him he would kill him, he remained unsatisfied. After a while the cars arrived at a mountain with a thick forest, and began to line up near the cars for further instruction. Scarlet told the essence of the trial. They are now in a place of artificial crystal cultivation, that is, this place is an artificial border with several reference energy points. They are to live for 3 days. In addition, they were given a briefcase with everything they would need for the duration of the test. On this mission you don't have to get deep into the forest or anywhere else. The main thing is to survive and discover your own talents. The students all have watches that scare away small alien races. However, just in case they find themselves in trouble, the watches can be used to summon help. Before the students take the test and step into the portal, they are warned that they are all human after all and should help each other. But if anyone harmed another person, they would be immediately expelled and court-martialed. At the test the students decided to divide into squads, and it was not forbidden, but there was a condition that there should not be more than 6 people in one squad. Harry was trying to find a squad, but he couldn't find one until a girl approached him. She offered Harry to join their squad, but at the same second she was called by her teammates, saying that they had no vacancies, even though there were only 4 people in the squad. But our hero decided not to interfere and just continued looking for another group. While the hero gave up hope of finding a team, he noticed someone following him. So he decided to escape from the starting point very quickly. While walking through the forest, the hero read notes about local aliens, particularly the snow snake. This snake was very interesting to the hero. It hunted by choosing the temperature, but it did not have a particularly strong attack. It had only average damage. But it was able to freeze its victims. Having chosen a target, Harry rushed to kill the snake and get the crystals out of it. Running through the forest, the hero came across a strange place where the whole ground was covered with ice. It was the lair of the frost snakes, which were crawling on the tops of trees. Noticing a couple of snakes, Harry immediately took out a knife and prepared for a fight. However, the snakes did not attack the hero, they began to fight among themselves. Wrapped around each other, the snakes fought hard. However, one of the snakes managed to use its tail to try to hit Harry. The hero quickly dodged and struck back. But at the last moment, before the knife blade pierced the skin of the snake, he stopped the blow. For something strange had happened. It was as if the snake did not react to Harry. Remembering a paragraph from the anti-alien manual that stated that a snake searches for prey using temperature, Harry realized the situation. Practically being a walking corpse, he had no blood temperature, as the processes of living organisms did not exist in him. Realizing this, he delivered a powerful blow that immediately blew the snake's head off. The snake immediately began to fuse back together to restore the head to the body. Noticing this, the student decided to strike several consecutive blows and the snake failed to fuse back together. As a result, the snake fell and a blue crystal appeared after its fall. Looking at the clue that appeared after picking up the crystal, the young man decided to absorb it. In the process of absorbing it, the entire area around the hero lit up with a blue light. It wasn't clear to him yet whether he was lucky with this decision or not. The crystal was able to swallow, not just the crystal, but all the abilities that Frost Snake had, freezing the enemy and so on. Is it a miracle? Because everyone like them didn't believe that he would be able to swallow the crystal at all. The strangers watching Harry from the bushes were also watching the squad that denied him entry. The squad discussed that it was very difficult to absorb a crystal, and even a full successful absorption was only 0.03%, practically making you one of the strongest. However, they were not desperate, and decided to go looking for crystals. The unknown squad consisted of 5 people, and they decided to break their watch earlier, even though the watch was very important to the test. They decided to wait out the entire test, then attack the squad that had successfully absorbed the crystal, and try to take possession of everything they could. Watching all of this, the instructors were very unhappy with the behavior and participation of the squads, especially the one that decided to go into the woods without equipment. Discussing this point, Scarlet offered to send help there, but the man in glasses immediately refused. In his opinion, if a couple of fools died, it would not hinder, but on the contrary, might even help. Meanwhile, Harry was testing his abilities. He was freezing berries on trees, using the heat vision he had inherited from a snake. After these experiments, his end-of-life immunity ability seemed useless. After absorbing the crystal, his body temperature didn't return, but the corpse stains disappeared. Having such abilities, he decided to test something. Kicking a tree, a snake immediately fell from it, which he destroyed in one blow. Did the guy finally find a solution? The regeneration can be stopped if the snake is deprived of a limb. Also, when the snake lost its life, it left behind a crystal, which was decided to absorb into itself. With this, Harry's personal skills increased several levels up, and there was one new one called regeneration. It turns out that you can pump up with the help of similar crystals. One crystal guarantees one upgrade, but it is not yet known how the upgrade will be after the yellow level. We'd have to kill a couple more snakes to find out. So Harry moved deeper into the forest to find them. The guys from the opposite team were wandering through the woods. They were getting farther and farther off the main road. Their main task at the moment was to find Harry, which they thought was the perfect opportunity to defeat him while he was alone. On the way, the guys came across the body of a snake that the guy had destroyed. It was a good lead for them, so the victim is somewhere nearby. It's actually a bit alarming how this guy managed to handle a snow snake all by himself. It's not something a normal person can do. Then a little farther away, the boys spotted 3 more of these snakes, a real reason to wonder if there was any point in messing with Harry or not. Based on all this, the theory was that this freak had already absorbed the crystal. But if he came prepared in the first place, we'd have to find out. Most of the team wanted to give up and not continue the search, because they were really scared, but the captain of the team said that they couldn't give up, because if they didn't deal with Harry now, he would get even stronger, and then there would be no chance. Meanwhile, the guy was in a place where just an incredible number of these snakes, most likely he was going to destroy them all that you raise your level and further. But thanks to his sense, he recognized that someone is chasing him. It turned out to be 5 people who became in a circle. But what kind of people? The first thing they did was to ask the kid to surrender, otherwise he would be deprived of his life. Apparently, these people needed crystals, of which the boy had a large amount at one point. As he absorbed them, he had nothing on his hands. Of course, no one believed him, because not everyone can absorb this kind of product, especially at such a young age. All the other snakes that these guys saw were not destroyed, but simply stunned. But in any case, these freaks came here to rob. We need to teach them a lesson so that this will not happen again in the future. In front of everyone, Harry took out his bag and dumped the contents on the floor. I wanted to dissuade the villain from attacking him. But there was only anger and rage in his eyes, and until he was convinced of it, he would not let go. To save himself, I had to invent a little legend that there were originally 4 crystals on his hands. Harry tried to absorb them and they just disappeared. The villain was even more angry. He could not understand how could he think of trying to absorb crystals without the help of an instructor. If it was that simple, then every fool could get into the special class. Now the most important task is to keep the body in good order and not get any injuries. Looks like this man has no intention of fighting. We need to chase him away and get all the crystals from these snakes. Since the guy didn't have any crystals, he was told to leave the watch and get the hell out of here, to which he graciously agreed. Then the guys in the gang also asked him to give them the knife. The captain was against it. He was worried Harry wouldn't attack them with that knife. In fact, it sounded funny, because the only one who wanted someone else's red liquid here was the captain. It almost came to a fight, but one of the gang intervened and told the boys not to shoot at each other, but to disperse. He stepped on a snake and stunned all the snakes that were around. They came to their senses and ran to attack this team of weak-minded bandits. They'd better not do any more stalking or the next time the punishment will be much harsher. As soon as the captain took the watch in his hands, he immediately heard a huge pack of snakes approaching. Everyone was shocked that they were really alive. It is necessary as soon as possible to run away from here, because just one bite of such a creature can only human life. No one will not be able to help. It would seem at first glance as such a powerful and strong bandit, and when he saw the snakes began to run to the peaceful area faster than anyone else. It wasn't worth it for those bandits to take his things. Karma would come quickly for such actions. Harry was already familiar with them before, but they didn't have much of a relationship with the man. The name of this woman who ran up to the guy was Jessica. She was wondering how he got here. Without any details, Harry just said he was mugged, and then these people went to destroy the monsters, but they're probably finishing up. The guy who came with this girl was named Jack. He was always trying to get away from this guy because he had a personal grudge against him. But because Jessica is a very good-natured person, she realized that you can't just leave this guy to his fate. Jack was very reluctant to invite him to his team, but he was willing to do anything for his girlfriend. Harry knew he wasn't welcome here, so he didn't want a place on this team. But if he stopped eating and drinking, it would not end well, and it would be inconvenient to destroy monsters without a knife. So he would go with them just to get his backpack, which contained all the necessary things for normal survival. On arrival at the place, the guys found a large number of snakes, which simply tempted the whole team of bandits. Only 1 man out of 5 gave even the slightest signs of life, and it lasted a short time. He asked for help, but the snake did not leave him the slightest chance for life. The boys couldn't understand why there were so many snakes here. And when they started to move in their direction, Jack and his friend broke away and ran in an unknown direction. They called out for the boy to come with them, but he didn't care. I wonder if a bunch of snakes scared them that much. On the other hand, maybe it was a good thing they'd run away, but no one else would know that Harry could easily mine crystals, destroying those things with a slight flick of his hand. They ended up with a huge number of them, and right now the absorption process will begin. After that, the guy will improve his skills significantly and become many times stronger. The experiment made it clear that to improve the level from yellow to green requires 10 crystals. Further improvement will follow the same principle. The probability of pumping skills with the help of one crystal was confirmed, because it was possible to improve freezing to the green third level, but the regeneration remained yellow. Apparently some force just does not allow it to improve. I'm sure the other people think that a mere human can't absorb the crystal. In ordinary people, after a failed absorption, the crystal would simply vaporize. Thanks to the fact that the guy's strength had increased significantly, he could now destroy snakes just in an instant, and collect several times more crystals, which are so necessary for improvement. In no way could anyone find out how many crystals Harry had already absorbed. Meanwhile, the organizers are already a little nervous. Usually around this time, with the help of the clock, people begin to call the instructor to help them, but nothing happens. Perhaps something went wrong and it's time to help them themselves, so as not to trigger this situation. The second organizer, whose name is Charlie, had a slightly different opinion on the matter. He was not in a hurry to help the participants. In his opinion, a small show should be organized first. In the meantime, Jack and his girlfriend brought a specialist to the place where 5 bodies of young boys were lying, so that he could adopt the cause of the deprivation of life. The expert determined that most of the wounds were snake bites, but there was one stab wound. 3 watches were out of order, their batteries were dead. Now it's time to review the video footage that was taken right at the time of the incident. The guys, when they were attacked by snakes, tried to scare them off with a sound wave, which can be turned on the watch if necessary. But for some reason it did not work, so they abandoned their comrade, who had already been caught by the viper, and made an attempt to escape. The situation was very critical, so the unscrupulous captain put a knife in the back of his comrade so that he would fall down and the snakes would be distracted by him. Harry led this team straight to the snake's nest and indirectly destroyed them with the snakes. That's the theory of the expert. If you look around, there's at least 30 snakes, so why didn't they attack Harry himself? That was an interesting question because the examiner didn't see the guy using any magic. It was decided to continue the military training, and in parallel find out what really happened here. Harry has enough cunning, bravery, and cold calculation. It's impressive. If he does come back alive after the training, we'll have to be sure to ask him a few questions. Meanwhile, in the academic canteen, sat Olivia and Leo. Today was the first day she came to study. She really liked it here, because the institution was beautiful, the dormitory was huge, the teachers were kind, the food in the canteen was delicious, everything was super. Leo handed the little girl a phone that had a satellite function on it. It would keep her connected wherever the user was. Since Harry had told his sister not to take anything from the hands of strangers, the girl began to refuse. This thing should not be viewed as a gift, but as a loan. There would be unlimited time to earn money for a new one, and this then needed to be paid back. In this case, Olivia decided not to be modest, and took this gorgeous phone for herself. Then the men decided to inquire about Harry's whereabouts. He was very angry when he found out about the military training, because he didn't understand how an ordinary person could be poisoned for military training. What the hell were they thinking at the academy? If something happened to him, all of Harry's relatives would hate Leo. To at least try to straighten things out, a phone call would have to be made immediately. His sister thought her brother might be in danger, but Leo said he was sure he was fine, so as not to alarm the baby. Let's hope he's okay. Meanwhile, Scarlet was sitting outdoors, preparing to have lunch with her partner. Suddenly a man named Thomas came up to them. He was from the Fengluan team. He had come here for a mission, and now he needed to meet with the commander to clarify the data. Scarlet recognized him right away, the same guy who was number 68 on the global list. She is furious that no one thought to warn the organizer about the postponement of the military exercises. Thomas's task is to save the student who is shown in the photo. He needs to know at least an approximate place where he can be. According to the latest information, he had poisoned himself in the safe zone, but no one could say if he had gotten there. Thomas decided not to even listen to what he was being told and ran towards the safe zone so as not to lose a minute. Military training seems to be going well, so what could have happened all of a sudden? There's no word on that yet, but he said he had some information about Thomas. When he found out that his brother was sick and only the snow snake crystal could help, he applied to come here. But there's a problem: the man suffers from a severe form of facial blindness. Well, as long as the students are being watched, nothing bad should happen. If they follow the pre-planned route, Thomas will go straight to the snake's nest. The main thing is to catch it. There are several snakes there. When he arrived at the place, the man noticed a destroyed snake. Most likely it was done by a man who does not know how to wield a sword at all. Then Harry could be seen on the horizon, tearing those snakes mercilessly just to get the crystal. He had an academy knife in his hands, an excellent weapon, but how could it be handled like that? Thomas couldn't stand this outrage. He walked up to the guy and said, "If the knife could show emotion, he would have cried. That's not how you wield a knife." Harry looked at him indignantly and couldn't understand why anyone cared how the sword worked. If there was a better way, then suggest it, not just criticize it. Thomas was surprised, because any other student would have been embarrassed long ago and gone somewhere else. The academy had given him only this knife, and no one had told him how to use it. Thomas told the boy to go away and never come back, and allowed him to take only one snake, which was already half sawed. But wasn't he ashamed to take booty from a man who had just begun his military training? Since it was a shared territory, the first-come first-served rule doesn't work here. And as for the snakes, they would go to the strongest. With the help of magic, Thomas was able to extract large numbers of snakes with great speed. Harry was very surprised when this master handled the snake with a single blow. It meant he was definitely a professional. His weapons were similar to what people used to use in the past, if this was official equipment. Since Thomas had no idea how strong Harry was, he felt very safe. An experienced warrior came to fight monsters alongside students. There is clearly something wrong. To protect himself, the guy decides to freeze this master. As well, he is not used to having his prey stolen from him, whoever it was. Then Harry pounces on him and starts beating him with all his might. For some reason there was too much density. The guy's bones are about to turn to dust, and this guy didn't even get hit. Since he didn't look like a villain, we could leave him like that. While Thomas was immobilized, Harry decided to graciously use his good knife. When the freeze was over, Thomas went to Charlie's house. He was just sitting in the fresh air, doing his work on his laptop. By the way, there were a lot of abrasions on the master's face. Maybe they appeared after the freeze was over. Charlie laughed when he saw the picture, a true friend. His wounds were not great, but his teachings were enormous, and his weapons must have been stolen. Thomas begged to be healed as soon as possible. He was returned to the state he had been in 24 hours ago. Afterward, they decided to sit down and talk about it. Charlie tried to track down the student who did it, couldn't do it because he couldn't see the watch signal on the screen. Currently, the only member who could wear the watch is Harry, but his watch was taken by the guys from the other gang. The guy beat up the master so badly that he didn't even remember his face to testify. Since everything was over, we need to forget this situation and focus on the original task, namely to get at least a couple of snow snake crystals. Because of the fact that Harry took all the snakes for himself, other people wandered in the forest for days and not find a live snake, and this particular guy got lost. Also, very often there were signs that said repair the road, how to move around here, if there are repairs everywhere. It was all Thomas's doing. He purposely made the students wander around the forest to get as many snakes as possible, which is already very few. The newcomers would have to wait for the older uncles to deal with their issues. Meanwhile, Harry came to another area where there should be a large number of snakes, but someone beat him to it and wiped them all out. It was probably Thomas. It was decided to climb the hill and see what was around. The first thing that caught his eye was the mountain, which was not on the map that was given out at the academy. It was worth trying your luck there. After climbing so far, the guys still managed to find a couple of snakes, but it's not enough. But even through them, the guy managed to increase his levels a bit more. The freezing time was increased to 2 minutes. With enough energy, it can be used several times, so the time can be made much longer. Due to the lack of hunger, thirst, and fatigue, the guy is a bit time-starved. Maybe it's already time to go back. Suddenly, the guy starts to feel like there is someone right behind his back. A very strong move. It turned out to be just a huge snow snake that wanted to slowly destroy the guy. But when Harry found her, she immediately attacked him, so as not to leave any chance for salvation. But Harry wasn't as simple a guy as he looked, so he dodged the attack. Because it was happening too fast, he did get hurt a little. This snake is very dangerous, so he had to heal right away. Objectively, there is very little chance of victory. I need to test the new freeze on him. Having used the spell, the only thing left was to hope for the most favorable outcome. The spell worked almost perfectly, it just needed a larger dosage for such a huge monster. Harry wouldn't part, and started freezing her just in all directions so that she definitely couldn't move for a certain amount of time. As soon as the ice cracked somewhere, the guy immediately added more freezing. Then, without wasting an opportunity, took his new weapon in his hands, and tried to destroy the snake. Everything was successful, but after so many frosts, almost all the strength had been used. Now we should try to find the crystal in this huge carcass. Meanwhile, all the participants were already gathering in the clearing, at least those who had managed to survive. There was still half an hour until the end of the gathering. All the students who had already shown up should come to Scarlet to register. The freak who had abandoned his whole team and stolen Harry's watch had also reached the clearing. By the way Thomas was following him, he was sure it was the man who had beaten him up, but it wasn't. This scared big guy only had Harry's watch. It was a pretty big problem, where to find the student he needed, and if he didn't come, it would be Thomas's problem alone. And now Charlie would give the young man a chance to justify himself, but it was unlikely that he would succeed, because the truth was long known. At the moment Harry was trying his best to get the crystal, he had almost completely taken the whole snake apart. Only the head was left, if he didn't do everything as soon as possible, otherwise it would regenerate and be as good as new again. A couple of deft movements, and the crystal flies out to its new owner. After absorbing such a powerful item, the guy will get a new skill called Explosion of Icy Red Liquid. The essence of it is that all abilities are increased by 1200%, lasting 30 seconds. After using it, weakness comes for 48 minutes. The guy had already received his punishment for his evil deeds, namely he would be sent to the tribunal. He started begging to be destroyed here, but it was too weak a punishment. Thomas couldn't calm down. He thought that Charlie had given him the wrong coordinates on purpose. At the moment, the only thing that mattered was that Harry still hadn't returned. The kids asked the instructor to take the students to the academy, and they would stay here and wait for the boy, and then drive home in Thomas's car. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. How could a rude teacher like Charlie let the kids who were late come back so easily? It certainly doesn't make any sense to make a circus in front of the instructor. The teachers liked Harry, so if Thomas was going to retaliate, he just had to do it without too much violence, to leave him unharmed. And so began their long wait, Thomas rocking the whole time and Charlie on his phone. 7 hours, what does he think he is? Who does he think he is? It was hard to imagine it would take that long. Charlie would kill the guy himself when he got there, because nerve cells don't regenerate. As suddenly Harry appears on the horizon, he was all battered and exhausted. Since no one was there, he thought he'd come too early. The first thing that caught Thomas's eye was his weapon, which was virtually destroyed. Its condition could have been better. He hadn't felt such anger at the students in a long time. He didn't think long. He tied the boy with shadows so that he wouldn't move and ran to attack. Thomas must have hit him too hard, because the guy is passed out and won't get up. But what to do with him if he does lose his life? Harry was thrown as much as 10 meters away. It seems this shadow has range too. The guy needs to find a way to stay away from them. I wonder what they are whispering about. Charlie said that Harry had caused the people from the opposite team to be bitten by snakes. All the evidence was there. Based on everything that was going on, the guy had a picture in his head that there were two men standing in front of him, one of whom had been poaching during the scientist's time, and the other who just didn't say anything. Probably they conspired and want to destroy him. So he decided not to stall for time and attack first. Thomas urged him to give up, because it was almost impossible to break through his defenses. Charlie had a hunch that Harry had a trump card up his sleeve, and he was curious to find out what it was. To achieve his goal, he decided to provoke the boy and told him that when he was gone, his little sister would be in trouble, too. After that, Harry's mind snapped to the fact that no one has the right to say anything bad about his sister, let alone threaten her. For such statements, the boy would punish absolutely anyone, no matter who was standing in front of him. Thomas was clearly starting to panic, and Charlie was trying to stay as calm as possible, to survive. Harry used a skill that improves all skills by 1,200%. Unfortunately, it's only for 30 seconds, but no matter, the guy will take full advantage of that time. The guy threw a huge ice wave towards the men. Thomas turned to ice in a second, and Charlie was still holding on. It was an incredible power. If it wasn't for the protection, there wouldn't have been a speck of it left. But it wasn't over yet. The surrounding temperature was very low. Everything would freeze in seconds. It takes a lot of energy for this skill. Harry lost almost all of his power in one use. You can't delay. You have to finish it. When the power ran out, the guy took his gun in his hands and wanted to make a shot, but he couldn't do it, because just in a moment it froze, too, right in his hands. It looked like the guy had exhausted not only all his strength, but also his luck. In the end, the exhausted guy just fell to the ground, and a red liquid began to ooze out. The men were shocked, to put it mildly, if with the help of amplification, it is possible to increase in such a large number of times. They slowly approached the boy and began to try to heal him. They couldn't just let him lose his life. Because of the lack of strength, Charlie also fell unconscious. Thomas was the only one who could stand on his feet. He had to drag the two of them to his car. Why can't that idiot Charlie stop getting into trouble? It was already late at night. The guys were put in the hospital. The device shows that Harry no longer has a pulse, and the temperature has dropped. Is there really no way to save him? Suddenly Charlie runs into the room and says that everyone quickly get out of here. The guy is just in a state of ambrosia, and the doctors have already written him off. Well, what a horror. Thomas had warned him that the guy's body even had cadaver stains on it. Charlie didn't let that stop him. He just started doing his job. He could tell if the guy was really alive or not, so he just had to wait a couple of days, and then it would be clear. It had been 2 days. Charlie had been discharged from the hospital, and the boys were standing around waiting for Harry to come back to life. Suddenly he started giving signs of life and trying to say something. He didn't like that the men were yelling too much, so he told them to shut up. The boys even had time to argue among themselves whether it was the anabiosis state, or whether he had really lost his life. Harry couldn't understand when the two of them had become such good friends. Olivia had been texting a lot over the past 2 days, saying that she was doing well and so on, and she wanted Harry to call her when he came to. Charlie formally introduced himself, and said that what happened to Harry was all his fault, so he apologized. On behalf of the entire student council, the boy was invited to join them. Harry pretended that he still didn't understand what was going on, and then sharply struck his fist in the face of his offender. He flew back to where he came from, and that's without even using magic. Now the acquaintance was definitely a success. Leo was talking to Olivia, and he brought her some crystal, telling her to take it in her hands and try to feel the energy inside. Scarlet was also with them, controlling the whole process. The probability of absorbing the crystal was a bare statistic. In fact, it all depended solely on a person's talent and mental state. Everyone hoped that the girl would be able to realize and absorb it today. This world is full of monsters, and only warriors can defeat them. The reason why Uncle Leo is so kind to Olivia and Harry is that he counts on the girl and hopes that all this upbringing will turn out to be a fat plus for him. Then the little girl finally meets her baby brother. He really freaked her out. The guy's uniform changed because he joined the student union and became a member of the disciplinary committee. There's also talk of a week's vacation after military training. Harry must have been assigned to this particular class for a reason. He wondered if anything interesting had happened while he was away. Olivia said it was no big deal, but the only thing was that she was given a fire crystal that she absorbed. Now she just had to become the strongest warrior and protect everyone. Even in this life, the little girl couldn't escape the fate of a team leader. The only thing a guy can help her with is to become even stronger to protect. As a result, after being absorbed, the girl gained 2 abilities, super speed and heavenly origin. She decided to demonstrate what she was capable of at the same time, and with a single kick, she was able to smash a stone statue, which was really quite powerful compared to before. Even though she had gotten stronger, it would not save her from responsibility for property damage she would have to pay later. The boys wrote a note of explanation. This time Scarlet forgave her and asked her not to break anything else. Jay would not be made to pay. Was it not an overly kind gesture? For Harry's good behavior at the military training camp, Scarlet suggested that he too absorb the crystal and could lend his help. The boy thanked her for such kindness, but said he would do everything himself. Did no one tell her anything? Scarlet realized that the guy wasn't interested in this at all, but at least he could make it less obvious. She also noticed the uniform of the student council. Charlie was going to find a receiver at the training camp. Meanwhile, Harry and his new mentors are already getting a tour of the new building. To put it mildly, it looked very nice. The students had their own gym and a large living space. The boy had asked for a room for himself, a room for one, which the president of the board could do. Thomas remembered that he had promised to teach the boy how to use a gun. So the first lesson would start right away. In the end, the training was very long. The guys tried absolutely all kinds of weapons that were available. The trainers were lying on the floor and could not move, and Harry was full of strength and energy. It was already 3 o'clock in the morning. There was a suggestion to eat and then return to the training. There was a snack bar on the 2nd floor, but the trainers still could not walk. The men couldn't understand why this guy didn't feel tired. The teachers were already so tired and the guy didn't even have time to master cold weapons. Usually warriors who enter the academy have good fighting skills. They grasp everything in about 10 minutes. But this guy couldn't handle swords or pistols or anything. But at least he went and brought his teachers some food and tasty drinks. He is not so hopeless. The boys drank the drink with gusto, and it was as if they had come alive again. In that case, Harry suggested to continue, for a 3-minute break after a 10-hour training session is too little, and the trainers fell to the floor again. According to them now they were only half alive, need another can. Finally it was decided to rest a little longer. Harry went to the other end of the room, picked up a can, and standing with his back to the trash can threw it right in there. It was a near-perfect hit. Maybe that's his hidden talent. Thomas asked him to throw it again, just 2 at a time. Without a second thought, the boy did it, and again, it was a perfect hit. From this Thomas concluded that Harry's best bet was a hidden weapon that he could suddenly reach for and throw. It might make sense to use the crystal of the Plains Badger. He's fearless and good at fighting, and he's got a good sense of smell. A punch of rage would help him build up his abilities faster, and he wouldn't need a weapon at all. Once the teacher encountered one of these on a mission, after activating the ability his battle power increases by 10 times. In such a state to resist him is very difficult. In the end it took 3 squads to destroy him. But now there is a question of where to get the crystal, because it is no longer from a regular badger, but from the royal. Since Thomas had failed to teach the boy how to use the weapon, he promised to find the crystal as compensation. It was decided to return to his hometown, and then as soon as everything was ready, Thomas would send a letter to the academy's address. It did seem weird. The man just left at 3 o'clock in the morning. I wonder if Harry is some kind of demon in her eyes. Charlie said that Thomas wasn't afraid of anyone. He just wanted to finish his training so he could find crystals for his brother, namely snow snake crystals with immunity to life deprivation. All the crystals that Thomas had managed to collect in the forest, he brought to his brother. even if the hope of recovery is small, but it is worth a try. He wasn't quite satisfied because the real cause of his illness was the phone family, not the crystals, but he took them nonetheless. The shadowy servant had now acquired the ability to be immune to the taking of life. That same evening, a courier arrived for Harry under the house, and brought a delivery in his name. In the future, if one more time to use the delivery service over the phone, you can get a discount of as much as 20%. It must be those badger crystals, looks very nice, even put a note. It turned out to be a love letter that said, "Ever since you left that day without saying goodbye, I can't sleep or eat. And I didn't think we'd meet again someday. See you at the fishing pier on September 15th at 8 p.m. Did that guy write that note, or was it some woman?" The letter was probably not addressed to Harry, so it was decided to just put it aside and give it to Charlie the next time they met. The boy decided not to wait too long, and started getting crystals right outside. After receiving a huge amount of positive effects, and increasing levels, the guy grabbed the sword and began training. Now everything was completely different. He finally understood what the sword is for and how to use it. In combat conditions, you can say Thomas coped with his task perfectly. Meanwhile, in the student conference room, one of the students was voicing his displeasure about the freshman Harry. He was against the boy being accepted into this group, since when could someone like him join them? Putting a boy like him as a member of the disciplinary committee is ridiculous. The students demanded an explanation from Charlie as to why this guy was put in the group. Because you can't take anyone, it's a very responsible position. The members of the disciplinary committee must be clearly distinguished by their strength and manners. While Harry was in the middle of a committee discussion, he was sitting in a lecture and listening intently to the teacher. This class was all about crystals, and how to take them from a lifeless creature. This topic brought up some interesting questions. And if a person is deprived of life, does the crystal fall off of them as well or not? You can't compare the structure of a human being to that of other races, so no. Finally, it was time for lunch. Harry and Olivia sat at the same table and discussed how everyone was doing. For some reason, the girl had no appetite, but her brother urged her to eat because she was still growing and she needed it. Then some third-year Nick, who showed a very open interest in Olivia, sat down at the table. The girl noticed that this guy had broken glasses, so she asked him to take them off, so he wouldn't hurt himself. Had to wear them for a reason. Under them was something interesting that scares people. Namely, eyes that glow in the dark. Olivia was fascinated. She thought it was very beautiful and unusual. When this boy's mom was 3 months pregnant, she wanted to absorb the crystal, but she failed. But the particles got into a new life that was born in the belly. And eventually the boy was born a true warrior, his body stronger than ordinary people's. In class, the teacher told him that such things were strictly forbidden, and could lead to very dire consequences. Absorbing crystals during pregnancy was strictly forbidden. By the way, since Harry is now a member of the disciplinary committee, he is required to be on patrol at lunchtime. In general, the academy is a decent place. There are practically no fights here, but in the Union lately, there have been some problems. But in case of trouble, the guy promised to help. By the way, his name is Villa. Olivia really wanted to go on patrol with her brother, but he wouldn't take her because you can't skip class. When Harry went out for his shift, he was looked at by all the girls passing by. They thought he was very attractive and handsome. Thanks to his super perception, the guy sensed that someone was following him. Why not find somewhere private to fight? Right in the middle of the street, the guy turns around and says 3 o'clock, behind a pole, 15 meters from here, preferably not late. The gang of these juvenile delinquents tell Harry to take off his clothes, get on his knees and bark, then maybe they'll let him go. Such an impudent offer only made the guy laugh, because he knew what would happen to these guys next. He slowly and confidently approached them closer and closer, until one of them lost his nerve and attacked. It was the most primitive, rash emotional attack. If a man sells out to his emotions, he's already lost. Gorik also activated his abilities, survived the perfect moment, and delivered the strongest blow with his fist to his face. Now it would be too late to ask for mercy. The guy was beating him in the air as hard as he could and as hard as he wanted. In the end, the weak-minded upstart fell to the ground and couldn't even move properly. Today he got for everyone he offended. His friends, who were unfortunately unharmed, could not believe what had happened. Only a few had managed to resist this student before. "Who is this Harry?" The boys quickly got up, grabbed their friend and ran off in an unknown direction. Well, at least they didn't leave him behind, which is good. On the way they met Olivia, who apparently hated the guy. She stopped the three of them and ordered them to give her the phone. First she asked nicely. And then she showed me what would happen if I refused her request. It didn't take long for the guys to give her the phone. And now it's time for a photo shoot. Now the guys will place this fight lover in various poses, and Olivia will successfully capture it, and then send to all friends and relatives to admire this beauty too. Having made a large number of compromises, the girl with the song left in an unknown direction. The next day, the boy came to the president in tears and complained about Harry's cruelty, in addition to the fact that he was beaten, and the photos were put on the network. Charlie asked for more details about what Harry was doing to his opponent. The upstart used his trademark move as usual, but Harry not only didn't get hurt, he nailed the guy to the earth. That means the waves didn't affect Harry, so he must have successfully absorbed the fearlessness. The annoying thing is that the guy fought completely unarmed and managed to do it all. With the upstart still alive, Charlie made the decision to just walk away. But how's this poor warrior supposed to move on? He's enemies with Harry. No one really cares about him. Just sit at home for a couple months, and then he can come back. That same evening Charlie came to visit Harry. He showed him the official ranking of fighting power, which is only for young people under 28 years old. On the 68th place was a man named Min. In fact, it was Harry, just so the teachers decided to hide the identity of the guy. But why not just leave the real name? What's the problem? And why do you need a ranking? That question just pissed Charlie off. The thing is that this guy is just a storehouse of talent. He can be written in different ways, like God of War, or a real king and so on. Every coach would want such a student. Also, if a person is on the list for a long time in one place, there may be questions from the organizers. Also, Charlie finally brought weapons that can be used freely. There were a large number of small-edged weapons, and of course a personal sword. Apparently Harry was in a bad mood, because he asked his teacher to leave his weapon and leave. He didn't like that answer, of course, because they had to go to the training ground. In the end, Harry just beat up his teacher, thus showing that he was already good with cold weapons, and he didn't need to practice every day at all. But even though Charlie was already beaten up, he wouldn't shut up, and he kept saying something. The guy's patience was wearing thin, and he just kicked his teacher out the door. He's really quite meticulous. He even made the blades for the kid himself. In this place sometimes groups of shooters train. You can try to practice with knives with skeet. The guy started the simulator and was getting ready to start the training. You need to step back 20 meters. The first round will start after 3 beeps.